Aloha and welcome to Java. Thank you kindly for joining me. It is Friday, so happy Friday, March 8th, 2024. There's a lot to go over today, so let's start right in. Main risk indicator still hovering around the 260 range. It's very interesting yesterday. The relative strength of the dollar and the 10-year yield, which make up a good part of that number, both retraced. So since those both dropped, it did allow stocks to run higher, more money to flow into the markets, if you will. So at the base of it, really, that is just showing what inflation is doing. When the dollar begins to lose value, people look to put it someplace else where they will get more value for it. Stock market is a large one here typically. So that's what's going on currently. As I'm doing this, the stock market is kind of showing that it's going to open green. We've got mixed for the futures, look a bit red. So probably a bit more of a volatile day. It is Friday, especially last hour. We would expect some volatility. So the sentiment is kind of reflected in the Asian stocks. They did gain on looking forward to the rate outlook for the United States because they affect the currencies globally. So, with this, they are watching the jobs numbers as they're saying that they're data dependent. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So, yesterday had jobless claims. We are going to get these other numbers, non farm payrolls and unemployment rate prior to market open. So, this stance as far as where these stocks are at the moment could change depending on those numbers, of course. So we've got concentrated US payrolls and growth likely masked by cooling. This is from Bloomberg. So basically, there's an expectation for the February jobs gains, but the January numbers likely revised down. So they're admitting these numbers don't come out clean, so to speak. They always revise them. And for the past five things, like as we said yesterday, they revise them down. So they say whatever they want the market to hear and then put out the real stuff later when nobody's watching. So, bond market watching jobs data. And this is basically all the investors just going to be waiting on these to come out. Treasury yields have a global effect. So, they will manage whatever the numbers come out with. If it's anything other than expected, they use terminology and language, will come out and speak. They'll send a Fed president out or whatever they need to in order to kind of guide that market back where they want it. So this is talking about shrinkflation, other terms for inflationary times. But the reality is that inflation is really only a marker of how much the currency is being devalued, how much purchasing power you're missing in that dollar. Today, you can buy less than you could yesterday because the dollar got weaker. So, in speaking with this, we've got what alternatives are coming out. They are inevitable. So, right now, we've got Bitcoin, and they're talking about the price needs a 5% dip to liquidate $2 billion of Bitcoin long. So, I think the possibilities for this to happen are very high. So on that 5% dip is kind of an opportunity to purchase more. I do expect that retracement that would be healthy for it to where it could set more of a level because it's breaking through its all-time highs and it needs to set up there higher. So with this, Jerome Powell spoke about having digital dollar, basically CBDC, saying that the US is a long way from launching one, but how long is a long way? Because they've spoken about these things before and they changed their minds about it. And they said that even if they did, it would not spy on users. So, what do you believe about that? Let me know in the comments. We've got Europe's economy has stalled, but an interest rate cut will likely have to wait for summer. So, Christine Lagarde came out and said basically they're making good progress, but that they are not there yet. They need to push their inflation down to a 2% target. So they're saying they'll have little data in April and a lot more for the June meeting. So very similar to what Powell is saying. In fact, they speak from the same playbook, even though they say they do not speak. Talking about they don't coordinate what their moves are, but they definitely do. They have to. So we've got Powell talking about rate cuts likely after inflation is tamed. So the whole narrative basically following along. She also says they want more evidence, quote unquote, to be sure inflation has been tamed and that they'll have this further data. So they're just speaking alike, basically targeting June. So a note about the numbers that they're going off of. Bureau of Labor Statistics is what they use for the reports. And this is a bit of a note that came out from Eric talking about the degradation of the data that is coming out. We know they cook these numbers, but this makes it easy for them to say, well, we did this action because of the numbers that they had received. And then they can basically change them later. So quite a bit of a Ponzi scheme, if you ask me. We had ISDA come out. So I thought this was very interesting. Basically, for derivatives, it's the banks pushing back, and they're saying that if they don't basically talk about treasuries being leveraged, that they're going to stop purchasing treasuries. And through the Federal Reserve, these banks are lately the largest purchasers because they're not going well on the retail market. So I think this is of significance because it is global for this derivatives market and very interesting. I'll keep you up on this. We've got short note. Current administration to propose a $5,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers. This is including non-documented, quote unquote, illegals that can purchase these homes. All of this tax credit comes as a hit to other taxpayers because it means they have to cover the deficit. So I have a short map here because we were speaking about energy, which is kind of regaining. And this is over European unions, if you can see as a heat map of what is their main source of energy. And oil, still the larger part of it. So their oil and natural gas are more subject to basically Russia, even with the sanctions. We'll talk a little more about that in a bit. So with this, Sweden officially became a part of NATO alliance, and they basically they've been claiming neutral for a very long time. So after their non-alignment policy, now they've had to kind of basically, they put in their papers to officially join NATO. So this is going to be very interesting as well. So some kind of fun news. China, the company Xpeng makes electric vehicles over there, has a drone car, and they completed their low altitude flights. So basically, they go airborne, and they're planning on using these flight taxis. So going further into the battles that they're having here, China getting ready for $27 billion chip fund so that they can counter the growing US curbs. So United States trying to sanction them, and they're urging everybody else, all of the allies, to squeeze China out of this further on chip technology. So they're trying to control who can supply these items that they need for this chip technology. But at the same time, very hypocritically, the chip breakthrough used tech from two US gear suppliers. SMIC used Applied Materials and Lam equipment to make their basically their microchip to subvert the sanctions. So, and the hypocrisy, it doesn't stop there. So we've got, with the sanctions, if you go back over to Iranian oil, the two EU members have been importing Iranian oil in 2023. So Iran now making a lot of money off of these sanctions as well. So moving over to the other side, we've got Russia threatening to expel US diplomats. Basically, they're accusing them of trying to recruit agents that would be of forget what they say, of influence, basically agents of influence under the guise of educational and cultural exchanges. So everybody does this, but they got caught. So Russia going to give them the boot if they don't cut back a bit, if you will. So we've got a new technology they're coming out with, working on self-destruct chips in an effort to combat criminal plague costing businesses every year. So this is a lower end support chip, basically, that they're talking about, can concentrate the energy and combust. So I can think of other implications for this and what it would be used for in the private sector down the road. I'm going to leave it there at that, but thought that was interesting. So just want to bring up a couple of lava updates to you. The first one is about microplastics. Basically, they're talking about these and nanoplastics, which are even smaller particles of these plastics in the environment. Bad for your health. We knew this, but now they're linking it to stroke, heart attack, earlier death, and they're finding them in the plaque of arteries, people that are having heart attacks. And I just want to thank Billy for bringing up a companion article that came out with this to kind of bring this forward, because I think it's very important. There's ways that you can kind of cut down on these or eliminate them since they're in the water supply. So I want to mention this really quickly because I thought this was cute. I have nothing to do with this. However, in the realm of decentralized cryptocurrency, there is a lava chain and they are lending. So they're going cross blockchain. We can talk about this later. I do want to mention that we are looking to Discord that Greg Manorino had mentioned and looking at doing like perhaps once or twice a question and answer session live during maybe a half hour, an hour during trading. So we'll put that link out soon. Until then, build community, like if you haven't already, please. And until I see you again, my friends, stay free.